All right, so let's go ahead and take the Angel apart. Okay, now obviously the first thing you always want to do is make sure there's no air in the gun. You know, you can kind of tell by, let's go ahead and pull the trigger, see if we can shut the eyes off here. There we go. Make sure there's no air in the gun, which there no longer is. And let's go ahead and shut it off. Okay. And first thing we'll do is we'll remove the reg. And let's go ahead and remove the macro line. And we'll go ahead and get the bolt out of here just for fun. And let's go ahead, first thing we're going to do here is let's go ahead and remove the grips. And we're going to, once we get the grips out, we're going to disconnect the eye wires and disconnect the solenoid. Now for the most part with Angels, there's not really a lot of user serviceable parts inside here. They recommend, what, about a drop of oil, 2 drops of oil every 10,000 shots into the ASA, and that's it. So there's not a lot of stuff you really have to worry about with the Angel in terms of maintenance, but I kind of like taking guns apart, so we'll go ahead and do that. So we disconnected the eye wires, disconnected the solenoid wires, and as always, like I told you guys a million times, anytime you disconnect wires, you always want to grab it by the connector. You never want to grab it by the wires and just yank the wires out. Next time you go to plug it in, you might have a nasty surprise in that you broke the wire harness, and that's going to be a very expensive repair. So always grab it by the connector, don't grab it by the wires. Okay, and now we're just going to carefully disconnect this and pull it away. Now actually the Angel has got a really nice trigger on it. I love the way the trigger feels on the Angel. It's just real light, real snappy. I mean, definitely a semi-auto trigger on the Angel. It feels great. Okay, now what we're going to do is let's go ahead and remove the ASA. Now there's a couple different sequences that you can take if you want to, if you're taking yours apart. You don't exactly have to go in this order. Go ahead and set the ASA aside. Now what we're going to do is let's go ahead and remove the back cap. This is a brand new gun. I've never taken it apart yet, so a lot of these screws are a little bit snug. There we go. Out comes the back cap. Now let's remove the LPR cap here. Out that goes. Now we're going to use one of the first, some people call them the Specialty Angel tools, but I'm pretty sure this is just a like an M4 thread to remove the LPR piston. Now something that I found out too, thanks to the guys over at angelowners.com, is the LPR, the pressure on the LPR, it doesn't, depending on whatever the pressure you put in through your high pressure regulator can affect the pressure that your LPR is putting out. So if the pressure on your high pressure regulator goes up, your LPR goes up. Your pressure goes down, your LPR goes down. So when you're setting your LPR pressure, you always want to set your velocity first to 300 feet per second or whatever, then come in and worry about fine tuning your LPR pressure. I believe there was a couple shims still left inside here. All right, we got them out. Okay, so we got all the shims out. And let's see what else we can start with here. Let's go ahead and remove the solenoid top cap. Let's get the solenoid out of the way. And we're going to start setting these parts out of the way. So I remember when Gavin took apart the standard Angel back I think probably at least a year ago, maybe even longer. He took I think he took 40 minutes to take it apart. So he was taking his sweet time. Let's see if I can break his record today. Not sure if I'm going to or not. I think it took him 40 minutes to take it apart, put it back together. We'll see if I can do better than that. So I'm going to use the screw here to try to slide this little back block here backwards. Let's see here. I mean, it is down with a little bit of pressure. There we go. Out it comes. Okay, so that's out of the way. Now what we can do is we can now slide the solenoid up and out. And this is something else you want to be careful anytime you're pulling wires out with Molex connectors, because it's very easy to get the connector caught on something and pull really hard, and whoop, off comes your connector. So not so much on newer guns, but boy, let me tell you what, on some older guns, I've had some surprises. Some of these things just come apart like crayon, or like, you know, they just comes apart in your fingers. Like, what the hell? I didn't even pull that hard. Okay, so now we got the, let's go ahead and remove the valve out of the front. And this is going to allow us to remove the eyes and remove the detents. Now when you take apart a normal Angel, that would be a spring. Out comes one eye cover, there goes the other. Now there is a little piece of rubber that they wedge into place here to hold the eye wires into place. So you just want to make sure you hold on to that little piece of rubber. There it goes, out it comes. Because it does do a really good job of holding it in place and prevents it from getting pinched. So I'm just going to set that over here. It's just like a little piece of little piece of rubber, but it works really, really well. So here's the eyes. The eyes are out. Let's go ahead and set that aside. Now what we can do is let's go ahead and go crazy and start pulling these pins out. You got 1, 2, 3, and let's start looking for some specialty tools here. It's like they like to call them, which is just basically M3, M4 threads. I can't believe it. Right now in my garage, what time is it right now? It's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and my garage right now, I got a temperature reading, tells me the inside and outside, and my garage right now is still like 90, what is it, 94 degrees in my garage right now. A freaking oven in here. All right. Now we're gonna pull this pin out that holds this front block in place. So just screw it all the way down, pulls out. Okay. And now this is always a little bit tricky on how to get this out. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove this front block here. And what I'm just going to do is take a flathead screwdriver, kind of stick it underneath here, twist a little bit, and out it comes. All right. And the valve's going to come out. There it is. And we'll just set that over there with the magnet. As the valve and the stem here get close together, it magnetically shoves it back into place. So it works really well. So cool. And now that we've got all of the pins removed out of the bottom, we should be able to start removing like the ram. Let's go ahead and get that out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab a swab. We can start pushing some of these things out. There we go. And we got the valve and the ram, so let's go ahead and remove that. Okay. Now comes the ram, and now what we're going to do is let's go ahead and slide the valve out the front. There it goes. And the Delrin side faces the ram. So cool. So one thing about the bomb swabs, boy, they are thick. So cool. So we've got the Angel pretty much completely taken apart. So there we go. So you can see all the way through it. We've got it completely taken apart. You know, it doesn't take that long, but definitely a little bit more tedious than most guns that are on the market. So cool. So let's go ahead and start wiping this stuff down, and we'll start putting it back together. All right, so let's go ahead and start putting this back together again. And probably the first thing I'll start with, probably one of the easiest parts, is let's go ahead and put the valve back together. And for this gun, I'm just going to use some monkey poo. Not really for any particular reason. And it's because I was kind of wanting to smell bananas right now. But if you want to pick this up, pick it up from oringmonkey.com. Works really well, and it smells like bananas. If you're into that, if you're the kind of person who likes to smell their lube a lot. So cool. So let's go ahead and start putting the valve together. Okay, now the valve is probably one of the easiest things to start with, so I always like to start with that and just get that out of the way. So we're going to put the valve in, start wiping down some of these pins, and let's go ahead and slide it in. There we go. Now we're going to go ahead and install the second part of the low pressure regulator, and we just want to carefully slide that down until it lines up with the pin. Okay, once it gets down there into place, you can take like an Allen key in there and just position it so that the pin lines up. Now the pins do have a little bit of a bevel to them, so if you're not exactly perfect, as you push the pin in, it'll adjust itself for you, but you definitely want to try to get it close to where it lines up perfectly. Now I'm looking for a spacer here, and I found it. Let's go ahead and drop the spacer in. Okay, now we've got the spacer in place. We're going to go ahead and install the solenoid. Now the most important thing here is you want to make sure that the gasket here is laid down there nice and flat, and you want to make sure there's nothing also on the bottom of the solenoid here. So let's go ahead and slide the Molex connector down. And you just want to be gentle, guiding it through the bottom of the gun. A pretty tight little corridor there, so it doesn't have a lot of room. There we go. Cool. So we got that in place. Now we can go ahead and put the top block on. Down in there. Slide it in place. There we go. And tighten that down. Presses the solenoid down. Okay. Now let's go ahead and we're going to drop the valve in place. Oops. It takes a little bit of coercion to get it in there, and you're not really coercion, but you can't really use a tool to kind of guide it into place because the magnet's going to stick to the tool. So, all right, let's go ahead and put on the front block now. All right, front block is in place, and let's go ahead and pick the eyes up here, and let's get them reinstalled. Now, I hope if you did this at home that you kept that little rubber piece I was telling you about, because they do help. That little rubber piece does help hold the eyes into this little channel here. It's going to make life a little bit easier as you're putting the grip frame on. Okay, I've got the little rubber piece here. I'm just going to wedge this back down into place. Very cool. And down that goes. Now, once the eyes are in place, and they do have a socket for them, so you want to make sure you put them in the correct socket. Now you can go ahead and put the detents over the top of them. And this is one of those times where you need like 8 fingers just to hold this in place. So here we go. Got it all in place. Now we can slide the eye cover over the top of it. All right, and now we've got all that held in place, and we're going to double check it once we plug the eyes back into the board. Now while I've got the valve here in my hand, I have heard that there are sometimes that there may be valve issues that can be disguised as, you know, as bolt stick. So if you're having bolt stick problems and you tried all of the prep work things that I've told you to do and you're still having bolt stick, it could be a valve issue where maybe the valve has a problem and it's dumping all the air out. Just something that I've heard while talking to the Angel techs. All right, so we got the ram all lined up, got the pin pushed in place. Now let's go ahead and install the LPR piston here. There we go. We've got to make sure all the shims and everything all go in there. Okay. There we go. Now we got the ram in place, we can install the bolt. Just go ahead and slide it back. And we'll put just a little bit of lube here as we go to install the front ASA. And let's go ahead and install this little plug here that goes behind the LPR. We're moving along pretty good here. We don't have much else to go. There we go. Now, when you're putting the trigger frame back on, sometimes it can get a little bit hairy because there's a magnet in there and can cause the trigger kind of jump out of the track. So you just want to make sure the trigger is down nice and flat. That plate that the bearings ride on is nice and flat, because it is possible for the magnet to sometimes pick up the trigger and cause it to jump off that track. There we go. There we go. I'll just put that in place this way this doesn't fall out. So let's go ahead and plug in the eye wires. Now the tinning on the eye wires, they're going to face each other. So if you're wondering how your eye wires face, it should be pretty easy to see because the way how they line up, the short one goes up top, the long one goes on the bottom. But you need miniature hands in order to push these into place, but there we go. Now's a good time to test, make sure the eyes work. All right. Okay, now what we're going to do is let's go ahead and take apart the high pressure regulator. The high pressure regulator is basically a cartridge style regulator. So this is basically just a shell to what's on the inside. Okay, we're going to remove where the macro line hose goes in. And now let's go ahead and remove the velocity adjustment screw. Now once you mess with this, obviously you're going to have to re-chrono your gun, but at least you'll know here in a second how to take it apart. It's pretty simple. Out comes the velocity adjustment screw. You need to be very careful because there is a ball bearing that's going to fall out. There it is. And once that's all out, you use the small special Angel 2. I believe this is like M2 or M3 threads. But you go ahead and screw it into the threaded portion here. Pull it out. And now this is completely hollow. There's nothing in this. This is just a shell. So Okay, and you pretty much use the same tool here to pull out the piston. Out comes the piston and the shims. So you've got, I believe you've got 6 shims here. So you definitely want to consult your manual on which way the shims go and stuff like that if you have any questions. So you just want to make sure that the shims are clean. And there's not like any sort of rust or any dirt on them or anything like that. So definitely, you know, put a little drop of oil on your fingers and just kind of rub it over the shims and make sure that you know, the shims aren't rusting or exposed to air or anything like that. So. I have seen, one of the ways I can always tell if a gun's been neglected or not is, you know, the condition of the shims. Boy, I pulled some shims out before that were really rusty, not in these guns, but, you know, dye guns and stuff like that. Sometimes you see these shims and they're rusty and they're got a ton of dirt on them. You definitely know the gun's probably been neglected. Owner's never taken it apart. So, not here at Tech TV, we take good care of our stuff. So, all right, so we got all the shims all taken apart. So now I'm just kind of cleaning off my fingers here. I'm just going to take a little bit of monkey poo here. And let's go ahead and clean the piston. I just got a rag close by here, so. Fresh coat of lube on here. And let's go ahead and put these pistons back in place. Or I'm sorry, the shims back in place. Like I said, this is a good time. You need, you know, if you're down this deep into your gun, this is a great time actually to have your manual out, so you know exactly which way these shims go back into the gun. Okay, so let's go ahead and clean out the inside here, any sort of gunk, residue. There we go. And we'll just put a little drop of oil down there. Oop, there we go. And we'll just put a drop of oil on this little Q-tip here. Just give it a nice little once over on the inside here. There we go. Push the piston back into place. Coat up these outside O-rings here. All right, let's go ahead and insert this back into the mini reg back into the shell here. Now the biggest thing you want to make sure is that the velocity adjustment screw hole lines up with the screw hole that is here on the reg. So all right, it's just a little bit off, so let's straighten it up. And now it's straightened up. Now let's go ahead and drop the ball bearing down in there. Now what you want to do is you want to tighten this down all the way until it stops, which basically means there's no air pressure going into the gun. And then once you get to a chronograph, you're going to want to start backing that out till you get your gun to 300 feet per second. There we go. Okay, so we just took apart the high pressure regulator. Let's go ahead and screw it back into the gun. Put the macro line back in it. Okay, so we got the regulator all put together, and you know, if we did this correctly, I think this tank's got a little bit of air pressure in it. Let's go ahead and screw a tank into the gun here. Let's go ahead and stuff let's go ahead and put a swab down the barrel here, and let's see if the gun shoots. Okay, so the gun shoots, so we know we've got to put it together. Don't hear any leaks in it right now, but we do need to get it to a chronograph because we did take the high pressure regulator apart and pretty much took the whole gun apart. So we need to get it to a chronograph, and now what we'll do is let's go out and do an efficiency test on the fly, and then we'll come back for the conclusion. Thank you.